What up, Sanctuary? It's PoolNoodleX, and today I'm bringing you the 10 best ladder starters for Season 4 on Project Diablo 2. These were all showcased with gear that you would or should have by the end of Hell, such as a crafted weapon or an early rune word like Spirit Sword, random gloves, rings, boots, belts, and a Splendor or a Spirit Shield, a 1-skill Ami, a lore helm or a crafted helm, and then everyone's respective class chest rune words for the 2 skills, unless it's a goal like the Paladin. I'm really excited that Season 4 is finally upon us, so without too much more of a delay, let's get to the action! To kick things off with the first one that made it to the list, it's the Fist of the Heavens Holy Bolt Paladin. This holy motherfucker spits out Zeus's pelvic thrust like it's nobody's business. What's great about this is Fist of the Heavens has no target cap on the holy bolts to my knowledge, and its dual damage being lightning and magic. In addition to that, Holy Bolt, which shares all the same synergies, happens to shotgun, making it the ideal boss killer as well. Even with just the noob suit, this one shuts down cows harder than Blizzard's D2R servers on launch week. Since the output is magic damage and lightning damage, you can choose whatever level 85 farming zone you want, and my favorite is generally Chaos, but with the changes to the Andy runs, that could easily be the move as well. Once you get a few skillers and some better gear, you can jump into maps which have almost literally 0 restrictions with this build. It's all around one of the strongest casters you can get your hands on early on, and it scales into the late game very well. The second one on our list is of course going to be the Ice Barrage Sorceress. This one is built around maxing Ice Barrage and all of its synergies, Ice Bolt, Glacial Spike, and Cold Mastery. By around level 70 with just +7 to all skills, the damage per popsicle was around 900 to 1000, and keep in mind that's per missile. Using cows as an example here, each popsicle explodes in an AoE around the target, meaning that when they're bunched up like this, you are quite often doing 4 to 5 times the damage with each one, which is just insane. For this one, I would highly recommend power farming cows above all else, but the non-cold immune level 85 zones like Ancient Tunnels, Swampy Pits, and Stony Tombs will serve you just as well. After you get a little bit more gear, you can transition into the non-cold immune maps like the T3 Ancestral Trials. For number 3 on the list, we have the Throw Barbarian. This one won't come as a surprise to a lot of people, as it's pretty well known that the Throw Barb is insane in the late game. Even here in the early game with shit like Lionheart, a Blood Helm, and some crafted throwing items that we picked up in Hell, we're able to throw tree branches hard enough to level the entire playing field. Early on, it's able to clear cows at a far above average pace, but since this build is physical, it has the entire list of 85 zones at its disposal. It only takes a few small upgrades and maybe a lacerator before this son of a bitch can start doing maps, and just like level 85 zones, this one doesn't have really any restrictions when it comes to maps. It's one of the only ones that I have no recommendations for, since you can pick whatever layout you really want and just go straight to Pound Town. The fourth one on our list is a 2-for-1, and that is either version of the Elemental Druid. The crazy thing is both versions of this are either physical and cold or physical and fire, so it has an innate ability to deal with cold and fire immune mobs. With either version at +7 to all skills, you can light up cows super easily, with the fire version being a little bit safer than its cold counterpart due to their casting range. Both of them have a wide variety of level 85 zones that they can farm while they get geared before doing maps. On the subject of maps, they can jump into maps pretty early just after a few skillers and can clear pretty much all of them, but I would recommend the T2 Jungle and the T3 Fall of Chaldeum for fire, and the T3 Ancestral Trials for cold as the most optimal places. Number 5 on the list is the Phoenix Strike Martial Arts Assassin. This might be my all-time favorite melee build because of its high adrenaline, high mobility style of play. With the basic starter kit we mentioned earlier, this class has the capability to actually clean house and cows and most of the level 85 areas, since its damage is physical, fire, lightning, and cold. The level 85 zone that I would recommend for this one is definitely the new Andy runs. The beauty of this build is that the gear isn't very expensive, and since it's technically 4 types of damage, it can do any and every map that's out there once it starts to get either MA skillers, Bartuks, or both. If I wasn't planning on doing Ubertrist for the next 3 months straight, I would probably be maining this class. The 6th build on this list is one that I don't think many people were going to be expecting, but it's the Freezing Arrow Boazon. For this one, we're using the Voice of Reason rune word in a bow, giving us Frozen Orb on strike and some negative enemy cold res. With the starter set and this bow, Freezing Arrow is at about 1600 to 1700, but thanks to our Pierce, it's exploding multiple times on mob packs, dropping them in just a few shots per clump. This is good news since starting out our attack speed is pretty much dog shit, but it's strong enough to make up for it. Like many others, cows are a high recommendation to start farming until you get some better gear, thanks to them being so bunched up. After getting some gear, I'd recommend that you hit the non-cold immune T3 Ancestral Trial map for higher level farming. Whatever number this is on the list, the next one is all versions of the Summoning Necro. The Golem version of this has been my season starter for pretty much much every season because of how strong these little bastards get early on. The Scalamancer is just as strong, it just requires more resummoning than I care to do. But they do have those badass new archers now. With just +6 to all skills, we have our Geodudes doing almost 4,000 damage each at 3,600 health. Because of this, they can farm cows early on and from a very safe distance as well as any of the level 85 zones. It just isn't the fastest or the most efficient at it. I generally use this build to farm enough to get about 10 to all skills before I swap over to my poison and clay build and then carry on from there. The skeleton version, however, has a new contender in their ring with those skeleton archers that I mentioned before. I think these are a fantastic addition as you now have options when it comes to how you want to be a skelly summoner. I do believe the mages were going to get some kind of AoE buff as well, but I haven't heard too much on that. The skeleton version can farm cows, level 85 areas, and even up to maps with just minimal gear upgrades since they have such a wide array of damage types. My only warning, like I said before, is that it just requires a lot of resummoning when you go the skelly route. The 8th on the list is Smokey's dad, the summoning druid. Now this one tends to play a little different than the summoning necromancer does. The summon druid starting out the season with 7 to all skills thanks to the rain rune word is actually one of the fastest boss killers in the entire game. This build has no problem super fisting Mephisto over and over again, so don't be afraid to get your hands up in there. Alternatively, this is actually a little slower to do cows, so it's better for level 85 area farming, and while it's mostly physical damage, the ravens do have a fair chunk of cold damage, so it helps with any physical immunes you run into. Since this build is so strong for bosses at low gear, you can really stack Magic Find early on to maximize your returns. When it comes to maps, the world is kind of your oyster, and you can do them if you feel it's necessary, but personally I really think boss stomping is where it's at for this one. For the 9th number on this Forsaken list, we have the Plague Javazon. This one is making a return from Season 2 and Season 3, and it's honestly one of the strongest ways to start in all of Project Diablo 2. With just the starter gear and some random +1 javelins, we're sitting at over 7,000 damage on Plague Toss. This build has absolutely no problem melting cows right after Hell Bale. It is incredibly hardcore friendly as well, since the playstyle is as simple as hurling your plague in the general direction of enemies and kiting until your legs get tired. With the Season 3 changes to the projectile speed and the poison spread speed, it's pretty easy to keep everything on your screen in that pretty color of green. Aside from cows, the level 85 areas that I would recommend farming the most are Chaos and Pits, as those two areas will generally not have any poison immunes. Once you obtain either better gear, skillers, or both, you can jump into some non-poison immune maps like the T3 Jungle or the T3 River of Blood. The 16th or like 5th on this list is Charizard's new Dynamax evolution, the Combustion Fireball Sorceress. As the name states, this one is oriented around using combustion on cooldown with fireball in between, both doing fantastic damage with our starter set around the lower 4,000s to the upper 5,000s. Both of these skills have a huge AoE, which makes things like power farming cows a super easy and quick clear early on, which is highly recommended for an early boost to your wallet. Some level 85 areas to consider are Stony Tombs, Maggot Lair, and Mausoleum. Now I've never seen anything great from Mausoleum, and you have to be crazy to enjoy farming Maggot Lair, so Stony Tombs is the move here. As for the maps, after you get a few skillers and maybe some better gear, I would recommend the T2 Jungle map as well as the T3 Fall of Chaldeum. That about wraps up our 10. Do me a favor, like this video if it helped you out, and also let me know what you're planning on starting with in the comments down below. I'm genuinely curious what everybody's going to be playing. In case you're looking for some live interaction, I am live on Twitch about 3 times a week, so I'll have a link to that in the description down below for you to drop a follow. There will be a few other links down there too, like one for the Noodle Gang Discord where a lot of us have been hanging out, so don't be a stranger and come on in. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Happy grinding, travelers, and I'll see you next week.